Alrighty, so today was pretty much as crazy as you could imagine in the House during question period. Pierre Poilievre is standing up to Justin Trudeau's corrupt regime on so many different fronts. You have two main angles today that took place in question period. You have some Conservative MPs went after the green slush fund, saying, hey, look, this is insane that Justin Trudeau's corrupt Liberal cabinet took taxpayers' money, and when they had committee hearings and certain votes on what to do with massive amounts of money, they would basically just bid on contracts with their own companies. Now, you can own a company as an elected official, but that all has to be very transparent, so there's no conflicts of interest, because you can't work for the government and have a company on the side that is in direct conflict with one another. And as we're seeing, this is very, very much happening with the Liberal government, which is why government is kind of frozen right now, right? That's why you have the Conservatives really pushing for the green slush fund. So we're going to start off the video with a super impactful speech on why the government is shut down or frozen right now, which is leading to three different options. The RCMP is getting involved. Justin Trudeau is under somewhat of an investigation by the RCMP for all of the criminal activities that have happened with this green slush fund. Now, he can provide those documents unredacted to the RCMP, which would incriminate himself. He's unlikely to do that, which means that the investigation into Justin Trudeau is likely to continue. That's one option. The other option is doing a vote of non-confidence, which the Bloc is just about to support. I thought they would do it today. Maybe after I post this video, they're going to come out with a press conference. But nonetheless, it's likely that the Bloc is going to support a vote of non-confidence this week. That's option number 2. Option number 3 is Justin Trudeau pulling out a Hail Mary and proroguing the government, basically shutting everything down. No House of Commons, no committee hearings. The doors are essentially locked, and there's no point for politicians to enter. There's no debates. There's kind of no investigation. Nothing happens. Now, this has been used in the past in 2008 by Stephen Harper during the financial crisis. Now, I don't agree with this being used. I think that Justin Trudeau would only use this if they really feel like the Bloc would vote against them for a vote of non-confidence, triggering an election. So he can block that. Those are kind of the options that I see right now. But it's very important for Canadians to understand how corrupt the Liberals are. The government, you have elected officials that represent Canada, their constituency, right? They've been voted in. They are taking taxpayers' money and using that money to pay their own company exorbitant amount of money, like $1,500 per hour, $2,000, $5,000 per hour charges to get themselves rich, their family rich, and it's all being buried. So that is one main focus in today's video. The other main focus is the 1 year unfortunate, anniversary or 1 year marker, however you want to call it, of the brutal Hamas attacks on Israel, leading to the death of many, and how that's kind of triggered all of these pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, pro-Palestine, pro-terrorist regime type of protests, but specifically in Canada. Now, in this avenue, the two different avenues that we're taking a look at today, Pierre Poilievre is very, very vocal. It's the 1 year marker of this. You have people in the streets protesting, and over the weekend we saw those protests happen, right? I made a couple videos about that. Insane amount of numbers calling for the extermination of, Israel, the death of Israel, the death of Jews. It's insane what's going on in the streets. Pierre Poilievre is saying, look, the government needs to do something. They need to say, hey, you can't do this or whatever it is. But the government, the Liberal government, and Justin Trudeau wasn't in the House today, but his alleged mistress or secret lover, Mélanie Joly, was. And she represented the Liberals on this topic. And she says, we're doing everything that we can for Israel. But they're not. And so these are the big avenues that we're going to be taking a look at today. So buckle up. I hope you stick around for the full thing, because there's going to be a lot of different things to different talking points in this video. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. So the layout of this is going to be very simple. There was a big speech by Conservative MP before question period started, about 9 or 10 minutes long, that was focusing on the green slush fund. So if you want to skip past that, skip about 10 minutes from now to the beginning of question period, where Pierre Poilievre takes the reins and just goes after the Liberal government. I hope you enjoy it.
Today, I am pleased to speak to an egregious violation of parliamentary privilege as a result of the Liberal government's refusal to and failure to comply with a Conservative motion that was duly passed by the House in June. The House of Commons, as a collective, and members of Parliament as individuals, have a number of rights and immunities that are necessary in order to perform their work. These rights and immunities are integral to the work of parliamentarians and are required in order to protect members of Parliament, as well as the authority and dignity of the House of Commons. Individual rights of members include freedom of speech in the House of Commons and committees, freedom from arrest in civil actions, exemptions from jury duty, exemption from being subpoenaed to attend court as a witness, freedom from obstruction, interference, and intimidation. Collective rights of the House of Commons include the right to discipline those found in breach of privilege or in contempt, and to remove members for misconduct, to regulate its own internal affairs, including its debates, agenda, and facilities, to maintain the attendance and service of its members, and to institute inquiries and demand papers. These rights are extremely important, and when the collective or individual rights of members of Parliament are violated, it is so serious that all other work must cease. The reason we are here today is because the Speaker of the House of Commons found that the Liberal government violated the collective rights of members by refusing to produce documents that the House of Commons had ordered. As I mentioned, the House enjoys the absolute and unfettered power, or it should, to order the production of documents that is not limited by statute. These powers are rooted in the Constitution Act of 1867 and the Parliament of Canada Act. Since the Speaker agreed with Conservatives that our rights as parliamentarians have been breached, all business of the House has ceased. There will be no debates of government bills and no debates on private members' bills, because this issue is so important that it must take precedence over all other business, and because the Liberal government has refused to comply with the lawful order of the House of Commons. For the benefit of Canadians who may be watching at home, I will discuss how this motion came to be and why the House has been seized with this issue for months. Sustainable Development
He's explaining it right now, folks.
Is a federally funded nonprofit fund that approves and distributes millions of dollars in funds annually to small and medium-sized businesses in the clean technology sector. This fund was established in 2001 by the Government of Canada to fund the development and demonstration of new technologies that promote sustainable development. This fund managed to run without controversy for many years. That is, until the Liberal government came to power and turned it into a green slush fund for their well-connected Liberal buddies. The trouble began when former Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Navdeep Bains, and his Liberal colleagues handpicked the board members and chair, who went on to spend almost $1 billion of taxpayer funds. This flagrant disregard for taxpayers' dollars and blatant corruption flew under the radar for many years. It was thanks to the works of Conservatives on various parliamentary committees, but especially the Industry and Technology Committee, that this scandal came to light and was fully investigated. In February of 2023, the allegations surrounding financial mismanagement and ethical lapses first came to light in the form of a complaint from a group of employees at the fund. The Government of Canada responded by conducting an internal investigation which found several issues with how the fund was managed. Parliamentary hearings also began at the same time. The Auditor General of Canada first began to look into these allegations a short while later in November 2023 and issued a damning report earlier this year. She found that there were 186 times where conflicts of interest occurred, meaning the board of directors and the chair handpicked where funding was going on. Some of that funding went to their own companies. The Auditor General took only a sampling of the funding and found that 82% of that sample were in conflict of interest, totaling $330 million. The Auditor General also found that SDTC did not follow conflict of interest policies in 90 separate cases, spending nearly $76 million on projects connected to the Liberals' friends appointed to run the fund, spending $59 million on projects that were not allowed or have been awarded any money, and spent $12 million on projects that were both a conflict of interest and ineligible for funding. In one instance, the hand-picked chair of the fund gave a shocking $217,000 to her own company.
Oh my God.
Canadians at home might be wondering how this could possibly happen. How could the Liberal-appointed board of the SDTC misappropriate such a large amount of tax dollars? How could the board possibly have so many conflicts? I will explain. Every single dollar that is dispersed by the billion-dollar Green Slush Fund has to be approved by the board of directors. The members of the board of directors would declare their conflicts when they happen to arise, and at the beginning of the meeting, those conflicts were declared. The trouble is that in many cases, a director would stay in the room, or in some cases, they would leave the room while members were voting to give funds to their own projects.
No.
Of course, a completely absurd way to run a fund, and led to these members willfully and purposely enriching themselves and the value of their companies. One egregious example of this scenario is when member of the board, Andre Lise Metho, who runs a venture capital firm called Cycle Capital, received $114 million in grants from the Green Slush Fund while she was sitting on the board. Her company's value tripled during her time on the board at SDTC because the receipt of these funds lent an untold amount of legitimacy to her company. Another shocking tidbit from this example is that Cycle Capital's in-house paid lobbyist was none other than the Liberal Minister of the Environment. He lobbied the PMO and the industry department 25 times while he was the paid lobbyist for Cycle Capital. Ms. Metho then went on, after her time at SDTC, to become a board member at the Canada Infrastructure Bank, where she gave a handsome gift of $170 million in infrastructure bank money to a company owned by the chair of SDTC, Annette Verschuren.
Wow.
We will turn to Ms. Verschuren's conflicts, which are second shocking example of the corruption, that took place under this Liberal government's watch. Annette Verschuren was appointed to be the chair of the Green Slush Fund by former Minister of Industry Navdeep Bains after he removed the previous chair, Jim Vasili, given his public criticism of the Liberal government's privacy legislation. Mr. Bains proposed Annette Verschuren, an entrepreneur who was receiving SDTC funding through one of her companies, as a replacement. The Minister, the Prime Minister's office, and the Privy Council office were warned of the risks associated with appointing a chair with so many conflict of interest, and were told that the fund had never had a chair with interest in companies receiving funding from SDTC. In 2019, Minister Bains proceeded with the appointment of Ms. Verschuren, despite repeated warnings expressed to his office. Ms. Verschuren sat in and moved 2 motions to funnel $38.5 million out the door in COVID relief payments. These are payments that went out the door in contravention of the contribution agreements with the SDTC had with ISED or Industry Canada. Not only did $38.5 million inappropriately go out the door in these COVID relief payments, but $220,000 was funneled into her own company.
Holy smokes, man.
She was the CEO, founder, majority shareholder, and sole director. She moved a motion and voted on sending $220,000 to her own company. Just recently, Ms. Verschuren was found guilty of breaking ethics laws by the Ethics Commissioner. In his report, the Ethics Commissioner stated that Ms. Verschuren, quote, improperly furthered the interest of the beneficiaries of SDTC funding to companies associated with those accelerators. These are just two examples of the shocking revelations that were uncovered by the Auditor General, the Ethics Commissioner, and my Conservative colleagues. 9 directors, according to the Auditor General, accounted for the 186 conflicts. I will remind members of this House that this fund had run well, by all accounts, until the Liberal government came into power and turned it into a slush fund. In fact, one of the whistleblowers who worked at the owned company stated, and I will quote, "The true failure of this situation stands at the feet of our current government, whose decision to protect wrongdoers and cover up their findings over the last 12 months is a serious indictment of how our democratic systems..."
So, for example, if I test it right now,
listen, I want to remind people that are joining us online to make sure that their microphones are in the mute position.
For crying out loud.
If they are having challenges, well, that's
Oh, my goodness.
their problems. Well, the honourable member wants to...
Idiot Liberals are probably joining with their mics on.
For Barrie, Springwater, or Madon.
Back from the top, restart it.
Thank you, Speaker, and I really appreciate everybody wanting to hear me from the top there. That means it must be really riveting and they're enjoying my words. I appreciate that. And to the Speaker, I would have loved the opportunity to start from the top, but I will continue on from my quote, which was, again, it's a great quote, everyone. This was right from
That's
the
pretty funny.
whistleblower who worked there. Quote, "The true failure of the situation stands at the feet of our current government." I'm sure they wanted to hear that a second time. "Whose decision to protect wrongdoers and cover up their findings over the last 12 months is a serious indictment of how our democratic systems and institutions are being corrupted by political interference. It should never have taken 2 years for the issues to reach this point. What should have been a straightforward process turned into a bureaucratic nightmare that allowed SDTC to continue wasting millions of dollars and abusing countless employees over the last year." Another quote from the same committee that your Mr. Speaker was, and I'd like to quote this. "I think the current government is more interested in protecting themselves and protecting the situation from being a public nightmare. They would rather protect wrongdoers and financial mismanagement than have to deal with a situation like SDTC in the public sphere." And I heard someone asking who said that. That was an employee who used to work at SDTC who was at committee and said that under committee. They're quoted. So that's right out of the committee meeting. I'm sorry, it gives me 5 more seconds. I've got lots more to go, Mr. Speaker. I'm looking forward to continuing after QP.
Now we're going to take a look at what happened during question period. Let me know, though, down in the comments what you guys think about that speech. Was it informative? Are these all talking points that you know of? And do you think that Justin Trudeau is going to prorogue the government, which would basically shut it down potentially until the new year? Or what do you think is going to come of this? Let me know down below in the comments.
Oral questions.
Oral questions. Questions on leader. It's going to be next Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know that this Prime Minister isn't worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. The Liberals have paralyzed this Parliament by refusing to respect your judgment, to produce the documents and give them to the RCMP. This is a $400 million scandal. Liberal-appointed executives gave money to their own businesses. 186 conflicts of interest, according to the Auditor General. Will the Liberals respect your judgment and give the evidence to the RCMP so we can get back to work? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition is saying is not true. This matter has been referred to the committee for further study. Will the Conservatives decide to follow that example?
The NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Prime Minister has ground the work of Parliament to a halt by refusing to respect your ruling. The government must hand over evidence to the police concerning the $400 million spending scandal that saw Liberal appointees give millions of dollars to their own companies. Wow. The Auditor General says there's 186 conflicts of interest in this scandal.
Oh,
Prime Minister in the cover-up, respect your ruling, give the police the information so that we can have accountability and get back to work.
Yeah.
The Honourable Leader of the
Work for Canadians.
in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's demonstrably false what the Leader of the Opposition is saying, because your ruling was to send this matter to the House and Procedure Affairs Committee for more study. And so, in fact, it is only the Conservatives that are now obstructing their own obstruction, because they don't want this to go to committee, because it would demonstrate that they are trying to upend charter rights and override police independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Nope.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliament can get back to work this minute if the government will just hand over the evidence to the police about this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. I found it interesting. They say everybody's going to lose their charter rights if the police get evidence into this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. No, what will happen is that the Liberal nominees and appointees who engaged in 186 conflicts of interest to stuff their own pockets will be held criminally accountable, and Canadians might get their money back. Why won't they hand over the evidence, respect your ruling, so we can get back to work around here?
There you go. That's working for Canadians.
In the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, what's interesting about this is that there's actually proof that the Leader of the Opposition is saying is false, because in your ruling you said this matter needs to go to the House and Procedures Affairs Committee for further study, because this is unprecedented in what the Conservatives are putting forward, because, as the RCMP mentioned, it would upend charter rights and it would blur the lines between judicial and legislative independence. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives can follow your ruling and we can all go back to work, which is what exactly the Canadians want us to do. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
We want you to release those documents.
Members for being very patient and not taking the microphone. I'm going to remind the Honourable Member from South Shore St. Margaret's to do the same. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A year ago today, a sadistic and genocidal death cult, Hamas, carried out the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and has 100 more hostages. Bring them home. Here at home, though, our Jewish friends and neighbors have been doubly victimized as anti-Semitic mobs take to the streets shouting, "From Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution: intifada, revolution." Will the government clearly and unequivocally condemn these genocidal chants from hateful mobs on our streets?
Yep. It's pretty crazy, man. Terrorist supporters in the streets of Canada.
Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, Judy Weinstein, Vivian Silver, Ben Mizrachi, Netta Epstein,
Oh my
Shir
goodness.
Georgi, Alexandre Luc, Idal Vital Kaploun, Tiferet Lapido. May their memories be a blessing. It was my honor to have met with their families here at home and in Israel. And on the anniversaries of Hamas' horrific attacks, my promise to their loved ones is the following: year after year, Canadians will honor their memories, and to Jewish people, we stand with you. We won't relent until the last hostage returns home.
Literally did not answer his question, but okay.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
She does relent every single day, just like her leader. I asked a very simple question.
There it is.
Mobs have taken to the streets in front of Jewish homes, hospitals,
Seniors.
and businesses to shout anti-Semitic hate slogans. I quoted a number of them and invited the minister to rise to her feet and specifically condemn them, to stand with Jews against the anti-Semitism that has been allowed to proliferate on our streets. So once again, will she condemn these anti-Semitic chants?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Solicitor General.
Mr. Speaker, today is October 7th, an anniversary of a horrific attack on Jews. 1,200 people killed, over 200 people taken hostage. Our solidarity is with Jews in Israel and with Jewish people in Canada and right around the world.
They just can't answer the question.
Against absolutely is the amount of hatred that we have seen in this country and countries around the world, where people will target Jewish Canadian schools, daycares, and synagogues for the acts that they have a problem with on another side of the world. We are better than that in this country. We need to stand up against that kind of hatred in support of Jewish people and in place of all people who defend their ability to worship how and whom they choose.
Wow. Can't answer the question.
I gave the Foreign Affairs Minister 2 opportunities to condemn the increasingly common and terrifying anti-Semitic chants we hear in the streets. Israel will soon be gone. There is only one solution, intifada, revolution. Twice she refused to condemn those remarks. She continues to pander to Hamas supporters in the Liberal Party as part of her leadership campaign rather than doing her job. So I'll give her another chance. Will she publicly support Israel's right to retaliate against the tyrants of Tehran and the terrorists in Hezbollah and Hamas to protect itself? Yes or no?
Yeah.
If we don't do politics about...
Hold on. Hold on. The speaker didn't announce you. Nobody heard you.
I just want to encourage all members to ensure, consistent with rulings in the past, and I will come back to this near the end of question period, but just to caution all members to please be judicious in their words. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, if there's a day where we don't do politics about people's lives being taken or people being killed, it's today.
Look at their fake enthusiasm. One person stood up.
Form of anti-Semitism, I hope, in this House. Any form of discrimination. And I really hope that my colleague in front will apologize.
Right on.
He's got people friggin' waving Hezbollah and Hamas flags in the streets of Toronto and Ottawa. What the hell's the matter with you?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
There was ever a day when we needed a government to stand up for what was right. This would be
today. Holy smokes.
Has sought to divide Canadians by saying one thing to one group and precisely the opposite to another group. And here in this House, remaining radio silent on condemning anti-Semitic chants and on supporting Israel's right to truly defend itself by retaliating against the terrorists and tyrants. Why won't she do the right thing and stand beside the Jewish people today?
Yeah. There you go, man.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago in the Middle East, peace was broken by a violent terrorist attack by Hamas. On this side of the ocean, we deserve to do better in terms of the protest that we articulate. It needs to be peaceful. What that means is you don't go out on the streets and target a daycare. You don't go out on the streets and target a community center. You don't go out on the streets and target a synagogue. Our resolve to fight anti-Semitism is strong. It has been strong since this Parliament started when we outlawed the willful promotion of anti-Semitism. It is even stronger now when we're advocating for more strict penalties, which that party opposes.
The Honourable Member from Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the NDP Liberals aren't worth the cost, crime or corruption. You, Mr. Speaker, ruled that this NDP Liberal government must hand over documents relating to what the Auditor General found was a $400 million fraud with 186 conflicts of interest. This is at a time when Canadians are having trouble heating, eating and housing themselves. When will this Liberal government end the cover-up and provide those documents to the RCMP as they should?
And then government can get back to work?
General. I'm going to appeal to that member as a former Crown prosecutor. He knows something about the independence of our institutions. When the police take action, they do so without political direction or manipulation. The police make decisions. They then go to a court and ask for a search warrant. It is judicially authorized because it has charter protections. That's something that member used to be familiar with. I just wish he would educate some of his colleagues about the importance of these safeguards and why they exist in democracies.
The Honourable Member from Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, listening to the Attorney General, you would almost think that the Liberals believe they have a charter right to line the pockets of Liberal insiders. This is at a time when Canadians are lining up at food banks, when people cannot afford their mortgages, they cannot find a house, and yet Liberals line pockets of Liberal insiders. This is so on brand for Liberals. It's like they're entitled to their entitlements. Mr. Speaker, when will this Liberal government end the entitlement for Liberal insiders, hand over the documents unredacted so that Canadians and police can know the truth?
The Honourable Minister,
we all want to see it.
And Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, there's a qualitative difference between providing documents for the purposes of Parliament and providing documents for the purposes of prosecution. The second you cross that line, you need to impose the protections that the Charter provides. That's what that document represents. Most Canadians get behind that document, save for my Conservative colleagues. The reason why the safeguards are important is because they protect things like privacy, your freedom from unreasonable search and seizure. Again, fundamental precepts that member knows full well because he used to practice in this area. I just wish he could educate his colleagues about why we need to safeguard important Charter rights.
Colleagues. The Honourable Member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Where'd Pierre go?
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. The Green Slush Fund is more proof that the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, crime or corruption. They have violated a House order to cover up for their friends. This $400 million Liberal scandal has paralysed Parliament, making it impossible to address the Prime Minister's agenda of crime and chaos. Will the NDP Liberals end the cover-up, give proof to the police so Parliament can get working for Canadians?
Yeah, the Liberals just have to comply.
For innovation.
That's all.
Mr. Speaker, talking about working for Canadians. Now Canadians at home we're seeing conservative blocking conservative motion, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine that? We live in a parallel world in this place. The Conservative are blocking their own motion, Mr. Speaker. What we did and we promised the Canadian was to get to the bottom of this, Mr. Speaker. There'll be 4 independent reports, Mr. Speaker, including the Auditor General, including the Commissioner of the RCMP. We said he has all the documents, Mr. Speaker. Not only the board resigned, the CEO resigned, the integrity of the foundation has been transferred. Mr. Speaker, we uphold the highest standard in this House.
Colleagues, the Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the Conflict of Interest Act is clear. A minister shall not be involved in the operations of a business while in cabinet. Text messages indicate that someone named Randy at the Minister of Edmonton's Shady Company was involved in its business operations, including an alleged $500,000 fraud. No one from the company named Randy can be identified except the minister, and everyone knows why. Will the minister finally fess up and just admit he broke the law?
There you go. There you go. Let's put some W's. Let's put some W's in the chat. I don't think we've done that today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We agree that as witnesses go to
She knows the other Randy.
share information that is asked for them by the committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very short answers today by Karina.
Albert, Edmonton.
Well, the minister seems to be in hiding. The fact is that it is no coincidence that after months of inquiry, there is no other Randy that can be.
I love how Michael Cooper uses his hands. It's like he just learned how to use them.
Only Randy ever connected to the Shady Company
to talk. It's pretty funny.
Minister. So again, will the minister stand in his place, fess up, admit he broke the law, and better yet, resign?
They're here.
Wow, I love it when the Conservatives put pressure on the Liberals to resign during question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said, if a witness is called before committee, they are expected to provide the information asked of them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We don't have the other Randy. You guys have hidden them.
Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, who's Randy? It's a question that has gripped the nation, and we have yet to receive a truthful answer. Text messages reveal that the Minister of Employment's fraud-ridden business partner was working with Randy to shake down a medical supply company. The texts show that Randy was in Vancouver the same day as the Minister of Employment was there attending a cabinet retreat. The minister denied speaking with his partner. He claimed he didn't even have his phone, but now he admits that he did text and call his partner. So will the minister stand up and admit that he's been Randy all along?
Oh! Put some W's down for our boy Lloyd.
Colleagues,
Randy's awfully quiet.
The government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we have stated all along, that if a witness is called to committee and asked to provide information, they need to provide that information to committee. Thank you.
That's right.
The honourable member from Sturgeon River.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Employment denied being Randy. He claimed he had no business dealing with his fraud-ridden business partner. He said he never even spoke to him in Vancouver while he was at the cabinet retreat. He said it was impossible. But after handing over his phone to the ethics commissioner, he finally admitted that he did text and call his business partner while at the cabinet retreat in Vancouver. The minister concealed the truth from Parliament for months, and only after getting caught did he admit his actions. Now the Speaker has even found his business partner in contempt of Parliament. The minister has had all summer to reveal the real Randy. Will he stand up and reveal himself today?
The honourable leader of the government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said and reiterate, that as a witness is called to committee and if they are asked to provide information to that committee, we expect they provide that information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very.
That's right, says Freeland.